Some people spend years planning the happiest day of their lives. Maya Brooks walked away from hers in less than 10 seconds. The music was already playing when the first scream echoed across the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white linen tables. Fresh roses lined the aisle. Guests smiled as they waited for the bride to appear. Everything was perfect. Almost perfect. Maya stood behind a pair of tall wooden doors, her fingers wrapped around a bouquet of ivory roses. Her wedding dress shimmered softly beneath the lights. After 7 long years of struggle, sacrifice, and waiting, this was supposed to be the day her life finally began. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. On the other side of those doors stood hundreds of people. Friends, family, co-workers, and the man she was about to marry. For a moment, everything felt still. Then came the sound. A chair scraping violently across the marble floor. A glass falling. Someone shouting for help. Maya opened her eyes. The ballroom music continued for another few seconds before confusion spread through the crowd like a ripple across water. More voices followed. Louder this time. Panicked.
Urgent.
She turned toward the reception area near the hotel restaurant. People were standing, pointing, gathering around one table. Something was wrong. Very wrong. One of the hotel staff rushed past her. Then another. Maya handed her bouquet to a bridesmaid without thinking. "Wait!" the woman called after her. "Maya, where are you going?" Maya didn't answer. Her heels clicked rapidly against the marble floor as she moved toward the commotion. The closer she got, the quieter everything seemed to become. The music faded. The conversations disappeared. All she could see was the crowd surrounding a man seated near the corner of the room. He looked to be in his late 50s. Well-dressed, expensive watch, silver hair. His face was strained as several guests stood helplessly around him. No one seemed to know what to do. Maya pushed through the crowd. Years of restaurant work had taught her how to stay calm when everyone else panicked. "Give him space," she said firmly. Several people stepped aside. The man's breathing appeared distressed. A terrified hotel employee stood frozen nearby holding a tray of untouched appetizers. Maya dropped to one knee beside the stranger. Her wedding dress spread across the polished floor like a pool of white silk. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked. The man's eyes met hers for a brief second. Fear, confusion, desperation, the kind of look that needed no words. Around them, dozens of guests watched in stunned silence. Somewhere in the distance, someone whispered that the ceremony was supposed to start in less than 5 minutes. Maya heard it. She simply ignored it. Nothing else mattered right now. Not the dress, not the flowers, not the schedule, not even the wedding. There was only one thing that mattered. The human being sitting in front of her. The ballroom doors remained open behind her. The aisle waited. The guests waited. The groom waited. But the bride never walked through those doors. Because at that exact moment, Maya Brooks made a choice that would change her life forever. What she didn't know was that the stranger she had chosen to help was one of the wealthiest men in America. And by the next morning, a black limousine would be parked outside her apartment building. Maya Brooks had spent 7 years waiting for a day that lasted less than 7 minutes. While hotel staff surrounded the stranger and emergency responders were being called, she remained beside him, calm and focused. The noise around her seemed distant now. Guests whispered. Family members stared. Several people recognized her immediately. Not as the bride. Not anymore. They saw her as the woman kneeling on the ballroom floor while her own ceremony stood frozen in time. But if anyone had known Maya's story, they might have understood why she made that choice so quickly. Maya had never been someone who looked away when another person needed help. She grew up on the south side of Charleston in a small apartment above a laundromat. The ceilings leaked when it rained. The air conditioner worked only when it wanted to. During the summers, she slept beside an old fan that rattled through the night like a tired engine. Money was always scarce. Hope was not. Her mother, Denise Brooks, worked 2 jobs for most of Maya's childhood. She cleaned offices during the day and stocked shelves at a grocery store 3 nights a week. Every dollar mattered. Every hour mattered. Maya learned early that life rarely handed people second chances. You created them yourself. By the time she was 16, she was helping pay bills. At 18, she was working breakfast shifts before community college classes. At 21, she had become the primary caregiver for her mother after a serious heart condition forced Denise to leave work. The dreams Maya once carried quietly shifted shape. She postponed school, then postponed it again. The years passed quickly. Responsibilities arrived faster than opportunities. Yet somehow she never complained. Her coworkers often noticed the same thing about her. No matter how difficult the day became, Maya treated every customer the same way. Rich or poor, friendly or rude, it did not matter. She greeted everyone with the same steady smile, the same quiet respect. Some people mistook that kindness for weakness. They were always wrong, because beneath her gentle voice lived something stronger than confidence. It was character, the kind built slowly through hardship, the kind no one could buy. 3 years earlier, she met Daniel Harper. He was kind, reliable, a high school history teacher with an easy laugh and a habit of carrying extra pens in his pocket. Unlike many people, Daniel never saw Maya as someone defined by struggle. He saw her strength. Their relationship grew slowly, carefully, patiently. There were no grand gestures.
No dramatic moments.
Just years of showing up for each other, helping each other, building something steady. When he proposed beside Charleston Harbor one spring evening, Maya cried before she could answer. Not because the proposal surprised her, because for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future that belonged to her. Not her job, not her bills, not her responsibilities. Her today was supposed to be the beginning of that future. Yet fate had interrupted those plans with a stranger sitting alone at a table near the ballroom. A stranger whose expensive watch caught the light as hotel staff carefully assisted him. A stranger Maya had never met before. At least that was what she believed. Because while she sat beside him in that crowded ballroom, neither of them realized their lives had already started moving toward the same destination. While Maya sat beside the recovering stranger, another story was unfolding beyond the ballroom walls. William Carter had spent most of his life surrounded by people and yet strangely alone. At 58 years old, he was the founder of Carter Dynamics, a technology empire whose software powered hospitals, schools, and businesses across the country. Financial magazines called him visionary. Business reporters called him relentless. Employees called him demanding but fair. Very few people knew the man behind the headlines. Fewer still knew how tired he had become. 20 years earlier, William had built his company from a rented office no larger than a 2-car garage. He worked 18-hour days, slept on folding chairs, missed birthdays, missed holidays, missed entire chapters of his own life. Success arrived slowly at first, then all at once. Private jets replaced economy seats. Boardrooms replaced coffee shops. Security teams replaced ordinary conversations. Wealth solved many problems, created others. Somewhere along the way, William realized that people no longer spoke to him the same way. They agreed too quickly, laughed too hard at his jokes, nodded before he finished speaking. Everyone seemed to want something. An investment, a favor, an introduction, a donation. It became difficult to know who genuinely cared and who simply cared about access. That was one reason he had chosen to attend the Charleston Economic Summit quietly. No major announcements, no media interviews, no television cameras. Just a few private meetings and one dinner before returning to New York. The hotel staff recognized his name, of course. Most executives did. But William preferred staying invisible when possible. He enjoyed observing people when they did not know who he was. Sometimes it reminded him of the world before success complicated everything. Earlier that evening, he had arrived. Alone.
No entourage.
No assistant. No security standing nearby. He sat at a corner table overlooking the ballroom entrance and watched wedding guests drift through the lobby. Families laughed together. Friends posed for photographs. Children ran across the polished floors before parents gently called them back. William found himself smiling more than once. There was something comforting about ordinary happiness. Something money could never manufacture. At one point, his attention settled briefly on a woman crossing the lobby in a wedding dress. She moved quickly, greeting guests while checking on family members and hotel staff at the same time. Even from a distance, she seemed more concerned about everyone else than herself. William remembered thinking she looked unusually calm for a bride. Then his phone rang. Another business call. Another problem requiring immediate attention. The moment passed. He never learned her name. Never expected their paths to cross again. Yet fate often arrives quietly. Not through grand plans or carefully arranged meetings. Through unexpected moments. Through strangers. Through decisions made in seconds. As emergency responders finally arrived at the hotel, William remained seated, still gathering himself. Across the room, Maya stood and stepped back, allowing professionals to take over. Their eyes met only briefly. Neither spoke. Neither understood the significance of that glance. But somewhere deep inside, William felt something unfamiliar. Gratitude. Not because someone had recognized his wealth or status. Because for perhaps the first time in years, someone had helped him without knowing either. The ballroom never fully recovered from the interruption. Even after the emergency responders left and the crowd slowly returned to their seats, a strange tension lingered in the air. Conversations became whispers. Smiles looked forced. Guests checked their watches. Some wondered whether the ceremony would continue. Others wondered why it had stopped at all. Maya stood alone in a quiet hallway near the bridal suite, staring at her reflection in a tall mirror. Her dress was no longer perfect. A few wrinkles crossed the fabric near her knees. One small section of lace had loosened. Tiny details. Yet somehow everything felt different now. The woman staring back at her looked exhausted. The door behind her opened softly. Her mother stepped inside. Denise Brooks had tears in her eyes, though she tried to hide them with a gentle smile. "Everyone is waiting," she said quietly. Maya nodded but did not move. "I know." Denise studied her daughter carefully. "Are you all right?" Maya wanted to answer immediately. Instead, she looked back at the mirror. The truth was complicated. She felt relieved that the stranger was safe. Relieved that she had acted when others froze. Yet another feeling had quietly settled into her chest. Something she could not explain. A sense that the day had shifted in a direction she could no longer control. Before she could speak, another voice appeared from the doorway. Daniel. He stood there in his dark suit, hands folded tightly in front of him. His expression was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that often arrives before disappointment finds its words. Denise quietly left the room. The door clicked shut. Silence followed. Daniel looked at Maya for several seconds. "You missed the ceremony." Maya lowered her eyes. "Someone needed help." "I know." His voice remained steady. "Everyone knows." Maya took a small step toward him. "Daniel." He shook his head gently. "Do you know what every person in that ballroom is talking about right now?" She did not answer. "Not the wedding." He forced a smile that never reached his eyes. "They are talking about the woman who ran away from her own ceremony." Maya felt her heart sink. That is not what happened. Maybe not. Daniel looked toward the floor. But it is what people saw. Another silence stretched between them. Long, heavy, uncomfortable. Maya realized something then. This conversation was not really about the ballroom, or the guests, or the stranger. It was about years of smaller moments. Moments when she put everyone else's needs ahead of her own. Ahead of theirs. Daniel finally looked up. "I love you, Maya." The words sounded sincere, honest, painful. But sometimes I feel like there will always be something more important than us. Maya opened her mouth to respond. Nothing came out, because deep down she feared he might believe that, and perhaps part of her feared it too. Outside, rain began tapping softly against the hotel windows. Inside, two people stood at a crossroads neither had expected to face. And while Maya searched for the right words, somewhere across town a private driver was already receiving instructions that would change everything by sunrise. Daniel left the room a few minutes later. He did not slam the door. He did not raise his voice. Somehow that made everything hurt more. Maya remained standing in front of the mirror long after he was gone. Outside, the ballroom slowly emptied. Guests gathered their coats. Family members exchanged uncertain glances. The wedding that had been planned for over a year quietly dissolved into an evening no one would forget. By the time Maya finally left the hotel, the rain had become steady. Charleston's streets glistened beneath rows of streetlights. Water rolled across the pavement in silver ribbons. Denise sat beside her in silence during the drive home. Neither woman seemed to know what to say. Some disappointments arrived too suddenly for words. Their apartment building looked exactly as it always had. 3 stories. Faded brick. A small front porch with peeling paint. Nothing about it suggested that today had been one of the most important days of Maya's life. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The familiar scent of coffee and lavender greeted her. Family photographs lined the hallway. A stack of unpaid utility bills sat on the kitchen counter beneath a magnet shaped like South Carolina. Ordinary life waited patiently for her return. Maya carefully removed her wedding shoes and placed them near the door. For a moment she simply stared at them. White satin, untouched. She had imagined this night so many times. Coming home married, laughing with Daniel, calling friends, looking through photographs. Instead, she stood alone in her living room while rain tapped softly against the windows. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Messages continued arriving every few minutes. Some offered support. Others asked questions. Few carried judgment disguised as concern. Maya placed the phone face down and walked toward the kitchen. She poured herself a cup of coffee even though it was nearly midnight. The drink had already gone cold by the time she remembered to take a sip. Across town, however, another person could not stop thinking about her. William Carter sat in a private suite overlooking Charleston Harbor. His physician had insisted on several precautionary evaluations. Everything appeared fine, physically at least, yet William found himself staring out the window instead of sleeping. He replayed the evening again and again. The crowded ballroom, the panic, the bride in white kneeling beside a stranger. Most people would have called for help and stepped away. Most people would have protected their own plans, their own happiness, their own moment. She had not. William picked up his phone. "Find her," he told his chief of staff. The woman on the other end paused. "Sir, the bride from the hotel." He glanced toward the harbor lights reflecting across the water. "I want to know her name." By sunrise, a team of professionals had already begun gathering information. Not because William was curious, because gratitude had become something deeper. The more details they uncovered, the quieter William became. Community college, restaurant shifts, medical bills, years spent caring for her mother, a canceled wedding. Every page revealed another reason she could have chosen herself that evening. Yet she had chosen someone else. Shortly after 6 o'clock the next morning, William closed the file and looked out the window once more. Then he made a decision. The kind of decision that changes more than one life. Meanwhile, Maya was still asleep on her couch, unaware that a black limousine had already begun its journey across the city toward her apartment. Maya woke to the sound of someone knocking on the apartment building's front door. At first she thought she had imagined it. Her neck ached from sleeping on the couch. The television still glowed softly from across the room. Gray morning light filtered through the curtains. For a few seconds she forgot everything. Then reality returned. The wedding dress hanging near the hallway. The unanswered messages. The empty ring box sitting on the coffee table. Her chest tightened. Another knock echoed through the building. This one louder. Denise was already peeking through the front window. "Maya," she called carefully. "You should come see this." Maya slipped on a sweater and walked toward the entrance. She expected a delivery driver, maybe a neighbor. Instead, she froze. Parked directly in front of their aging apartment building sat a long black limousine. Its polished exterior reflected the morning sunlight like glass. Several neighbors stood outside pretending not to stare. They failed miserably. Curtains shifted in nearby windows. A man in a tailored navy suit stood beside the vehicle holding a leather portfolio. Everything about him looked expensive. Everything about him looked out of place on their quiet street. Maya opened the building door. "Can I help you?" The man offered a polite smile. "Miss Maya Brooks?" "Yes. Good morning. My name is Thomas Reynolds. I work for Mr. William Carter." Maya blinked. The name sounded familiar. Then she remembered. The stranger from the hotel. Thomas extended a business card. "Mr. Carter would like the opportunity to thank you personally." Maya looked from the card to the limousine. "I think there must be some mistake." "There is no mistake." Thomas's voice remained calm, professional. "Mr. Carter asked me to bring you to his Charleston residence this morning." Maya almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the entire situation felt impossible. 24 hours earlier, she had been preparing to walk down an aisle. Now a billionaire's representative stood outside her apartment. "I cannot just leave," she said. Thomas nodded as though expecting the answer. Of course. Mr. Carter anticipated that. He opened the portfolio and handed her a folder. Inside were several documents. Hospital records from the previous evening. A handwritten note. Maya unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was elegant but slightly uneven. "Miss Brooks, yesterday you gave up something precious for someone you did not know. Most people spend their lives talking about values. You demonstrated yours in a single moment. Please allow me the opportunity to say thank you properly. Respectfully, William Carter." Maya read the note twice, then a third time. Something about the words felt genuine. Not corporate. Not performative. Human. Denise quietly touched her daughter's arm. "You should go." Maya looked at her mother. "You really think so?" Denise smiled softly. "I think life is knocking on your door. Again." Outside, Thomas opened the limousine door. Maya took one last glance at the apartment building. The cracked sidewalk. The rusted mailbox. The place that had contained her entire world for years. Then she stepped forward. She did not know what waited on the other side of that ride. She only knew that somewhere ahead, a conversation was waiting. And by the end of it, nothing about her future would look the same. The ride across Charleston felt strangely quiet. Maya sat near the window watching familiar streets slowly disappear behind her. Small restaurants gave way to waterfront neighborhoods. Then came gates, tall hedges, long private roads lined with ancient oak trees. The limousine eventually turned toward a sprawling estate overlooking the harbor. Maya had seen houses like this only in magazines sitting in waiting rooms. The property seemed less like a home and more like a private resort. Yet the view that caught her attention was not the mansion. It was the water. Sunlight danced across the harbor in thousands of tiny reflections. Calm, steady, endless. Thomas escorted her through the front entrance. Marble floors stretched beneath her feet. Large windows filled the space with natural light. Expensive artwork decorated the walls. Everything looked perfect, yet nothing felt cold. The home carried signs of actual life. Family photographs, books resting on tables, a half-finished crossword puzzle beside an armchair. The details surprised her. A woman greeted them near a staircase. "Miss Brooks," she said warmly. "Mr. Carter is waiting for you." Maya followed her through a sunlit hallway toward a private study. The door opened. William Carter stood beside a large window overlooking the harbor. He was dressed simply in a light blue shirt and dark slacks. No expensive suit. No public image. Just a man. For a moment neither spoke. Then William smiled. "You look different without a ballroom full of people watching." Maya laughed softly despite herself. "I was thinking the same thing." William gestured toward two chairs near a small table. A fresh pot of coffee sat between them. Maya noticed that one cup had already grown cold. He had been waiting a while. "First," William said as they sat down, "thank you." The words were simple, honest, nothing rehearsed. Maya lowered her eyes briefly. You do not owe me anything. That is where we disagree. William leaned back in his chair. Most people measure value by money. I learned a long time ago that time is far more valuable. His gaze drifted toward the harbor. Yesterday, you gave up one of the most important moments of your life to help someone you had never met. Maya remained silent. Do you regret it? He asked. The question lingered between them. Maya thought carefully before answering. I regret that people were hurt. Her voice softened. But I do not regret helping. William nodded slowly, almost as if that answer confirmed something he had already suspected. He opened a folder resting beside him. Maya expected legal papers. Instead, she found photographs, community events, scholarship programs, children's hospitals, food assistance initiatives. These are organizations supported through my foundation, William explained. Yesterday, I realized something. He looked directly at her. Many people write checks. Very few people show up when it matters. Maya studied the photographs quietly. What are you saying? William smiled. I am saying I would like to offer you an opportunity. Before Maya could respond, another voice appeared from the doorway. Dad, the board members are arriving. A woman in her early 30s stepped into the room carrying a tablet. She stopped when she saw Maya. Then her eyes widened with recognition. Wait, she said softly. You are the woman from the hotel. Maya suddenly realized this meeting might be far bigger than she ever imagined. The young woman stepped fully into the study and offered Maya a warm smile. I am Emily Carter, she said, and I owe you more than I can explain. Maya stood politely, unsure what to say. Emily crossed the room and shook her hand. There was no hesitation, no distance, only sincerity. William watched quietly from his chair. Emily runs most of our foundation operations, he explained. She also spent most of last night reminding me how lucky I was. Emily laughed softly. Someone had to. The tension in the room eased. For the first time since arriving, Maya felt herself relax. They moved into a larger conference room overlooking the harbor. Several board members had already gathered around a long table. Men and women in tailored suits reviewed documents and exchanged greetings. Maya immediately felt out of place. She almost suggested waiting elsewhere. Then something unexpected happened. Every person in the room stood when she entered. Not because of her title, not because of her wealth, because they knew who she was. Maya stopped walking. William noticed. Please, he said gently. Seat. She took a seat near the end of the table. The room slowly settled. William remained standing. For a moment he looked less like a billionaire and more like a father preparing to tell an important story. Yesterday, he began. Many of you heard about the medical incident at the Charleston summit. Several heads nodded. What most of you do not know is that this woman changed the outcome of that day. Maya lowered her eyes. The attention made her uncomfortable. William continued. If circumstances had unfolded differently, thousands of employees, dozens of ongoing projects, and several charitable initiatives would have faced immediate uncertainty. He paused. Miss Brooks had no way of knowing any of that. Silence filled the room. She acted because someone needed help. The board members listened carefully. No one interrupted. No one checked a phone. Maya realized they were not studying her appearance. They were studying her character. William opened another folder and slid it across the table. Last year, our foundation launched a leadership initiative. Emily smiled knowingly. We have been searching for someone to help oversee community partnerships. Nationwide. Maya looked confused. I do not have experience running a foundation. That depends on how you define experience, Emily replied. She pointed towards several photographs displayed on a screen. Food drives, hospital fundraisers, neighborhood programs, volunteer events. Everything here exists because people care enough to show up. Maya recognized the message immediately. William nodded. Skills can be taught. Integrity cannot. The words settled heavily in the room. Maya stared at the folder. Inside was not a donation, not a reward. It was an opportunity. A real position, full salary, benefits, leadership training, resources to help communities across the country. For a moment she could not speak. Her entire life she had worked to survive. No one had ever looked at her and seen potential on this scale. Then her phone vibrated quietly. A text message appeared on the screen. Daniel Harper. Her heart skipped. She opened the message slowly. The words were brief, honest, and they would force her to make one more life-changing decision before the day was over. The message was short, just one sentence. "I am sorry, Maya. I should have understood." She stared at the screen for several seconds. Around her, conversations continued. Papers moved across the conference table. Opportunities she had never imagined waited only a few feet away. Yet her attention remained fixed on those 8 words. Not because they would change her decision, because they brought clarity. For the first time since the wedding, Maya understood that neither she nor Daniel had been wrong. They had simply been walking toward different futures. She slowly locked her phone and looked up. William noticed immediately. "Everything all right?" Maya smiled softly. "I think so." He nodded as if he understood more than she had said. The meeting continued for another hour. Questions were asked. Ideas were shared. Community programs were discussed. To Maya's surprise, no one cared about where she lived or how much money she had. They cared about her perspective, her experiences, her ability to connect with people others often overlooked. When the meeting finally ended, the board members shook her hand one by one. Several thanked her for coming. Others welcomed her to the team. Maya stepped outside onto a large terrace overlooking Charleston Harbor. The afternoon sun reflected across the water. A gentle breeze carried the scent of salt and summer air. William joined her a few moments later. Neither spoke immediately. Sometimes silence said enough. "You know," William finally said, "most people think yesterday changed my life." Maya glanced toward him. "Did it not?" He smiled. "It did." His eyes moved toward the horizon. "But I think it changed yours too." Maya followed his gaze. For years her life had been measured by responsibilities. Bills, shifts, sacrifices. Yet standing there, she felt something unfamiliar. Possibility. Not because a billionaire had noticed her. Not because of a new job. Because for the first time, someone had recognized the value she carried long before she ever entered that ballroom. A value that had nothing to do with money. William extended a small box toward her. Inside rested the ivory rose from her bouquet, carefully preserved. Maya looked at him in surprise. "How?" William laughed softly. "Some things are worth saving." Tears filled her eyes. Not from sadness. From gratitude. She accepted the flower and held it gently. Below them, boats moved across the harbor. Above them, the sky stretched endlessly blue. And in that quiet moment, Maya finally understood something life had been trying to teach her all along. The most important choices are rarely the easiest ones. They are the ones that reveal who we already are. Yesterday she had chosen a stranger over her own plans. Today that choice had opened a door she never knew existed. And somewhere beyond the harbor, beyond the city, beyond everything she once thought her future would be, a new chapter was already beginning. Because kindness had cost her something. But in the end, it revealed something far more valuable than what she lost. It revealed who she was.